Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV, where we review movies, television series, and do celebrity legal news. Also, join me for my pop culture chats. If you'd like to support the channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. My Venmo and Cash App is below. Thank you so much, and let's get started.
Hello, people. Hello. Listen, we are going to get to it. We're going to get to everything. Today, we're going to be talking about the ICE protest in Minnesota. Talk about, you see on the screen, the three people who have been, lives have been pruned from the timeline by ICE. And also, we'll just kind of just briefly hit on how the Trump administration is unable to control the narrative going for as it's been in the past couple of weeks in Minnesota. As you all come in, please make sure that you all are hitting that like button. And if you like what you see, please make sure that you are subscribing. Also, if you like my movies and television reviews, please go follow me on my second channel, which is PETV underscore reacts, which is PETV underscore reacts. Once again, as you all are entering, please make sure that you are hitting that like button. Okay. Let's get into this. As we know, in the past couple of weeks, ICE has been working heavy and prevalent in the city of Minneapolis, and they are working according to them that they are picking up people who are quote unquote criminals in the and their immigration status, either they don't have immigration status, or they're working on their immigration status, but due to their criminal status, they're saying they're not going to honor their immigration status, and so therefore they're saying that they are trying to get these certain people out of the country. Where they're taking these people, I'm not sure, because we are finding out that the administration is paying different countries to house the people that they are forcibly deporting. And my understanding in regards to that is, once they get deported to the country that the administration is paying, that country then assumes deportation rights, because that person actually doesn't have a right to be in that country. And so therefore they can then transport them to, I guess, their country of origin. I guess this is some kind of end round them having to go through the due process section of it, because they are going to say, hey, that country decided that they're over in that country, and that country decided that they were not have a legal status to be in their country, so therefore that country deported them. But I don't know how and if there's any lawyers out there, I don't know how they're going to get around that. Good evening, Tori, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining. I don't know how they're going to get around that, because of the fact that you're paying that other country an agreement to do that. So I don't know the legalities around all of that. I don't know the legalities in all of that, but I do know that that's what's happening. So these people are being deported to different countries, and then that country, because we know that it's either Ghana or Nigeria has signed an agreement to do that, and people are getting, if they're of African descent, they are getting deported, or if they're Africans, they're getting, or if they're somewhere over in that section of the world, they're getting deported to Ghana, and then Ghana is saying that they don't have rights to be in Ghana, and then Ghana is deporting them to the country that they are of origin on the continent. And I know that Zimbabwe, and I do believe Uganda has that type of agreement with the United States of America. We just saw that Palau has that agreement with the United States of America, and they're getting paid. Was it $45 to $75 million to do this. All in all, this budget that ICE has ballooned, is the because of the big beautiful bill, is the budget that has a lot of this quote unquote disposable funds to be able to do all this. So we are paying country literally hundreds of millions of dollars to house these people and to deport them as they need to. And we're paying ICE a large sum of money to quote unquote deport a certain amount of people. Now, as I've said before, if you are here legally and you know you are here legally, and you know, if they come for you, they're going to come for you because they know that you're here illegally, and they're going to knock down the doors of your loved ones. They're going to do that. So you have to make conscious decisions about you and your family. If you want to keep your family safe, go ahead and go home and then dust yourself off and try again. I wouldn't, the tactics of ICE are awful. They are using tactics that they used back in the 1700s when they were when the police force was known as slave catchers. They are using those same types of tactics on people. I don't agree with that. But if you are breaking the law, you are breaking the law, and you have you stand the chance that ICE is going to come to your home. Now, now these three people that I have on my screen, you have Keith Porter. Keith Porter was pruned from the timeline by an off-duty ICE agent while during New Year's Eve. Some people on New Year's Eve, they'll shoot guns up in the air, and it's my understanding that that's what he was doing. The ICE agent who was off duty felt that there was a problem. He goes up and he ends up shooting the man and pruning him from the timeline. I think and that pruning of the timeline is not as discussed as it should be, and it should be discussed a little bit more. So all the people who are pro-Black and Black Lives Matter and FBA and Pan African and all of these people should be talking about this death on their platforms, because it is, in my opinion, suspicious. And I'm also getting a feeling that because ICE agents have the backing from the man of at the top, they're feeling like they are invincible because they have that qualified immunity, meaning things that they do while they're on duty, they will not be charged. But again, the ICE agent that pruned Keith Porter from the timeline was off duty. His duty was to have called the police. We are all familiar a couple of weeks ago with Renee Good. She was pruned from the timeline. She was I think that they call them a trained observer. And her and an ICE agent and I guess her wife had gotten into a little word back and forth. She gets in the car. She is attempting to drive away. The ICE agent at the front of the car, and it says that she was trying to hit him, and he unloaded several shots into the car, thus pruning her from the timeline. I'm also being made aware that ICE agents in that particular instance, they are being trained to jump in front of the car so that they can have the fear of death, and they would have it would be a justifiable shooting. Now, we saw with this weekend that this last person, Alex Pretty, he was pruned from the timeline, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to be showing, I guess, a minute by minute timeline. This is going to be provided by ABC News. see if I can get it up. That shows what happened. I am not going to be showing, let's be clear. All right, let's share the screen. All right, so this is from ABC News, and if it gets to be a little too much, I will stop it. But this is what happened this weekend.
Verified them and then went frame by frame, and we have now a fuller picture of what occurred over just minutes when an initially non-violent encounter turned deadly and became yet another flashpoint in the nation's vigorous debate over immigration enforcement, the use of lethal force, and accountability.
At least 3 minutes before Alex Preddy was shot and killed, he is seen at 8:58 a.m. Saturday holding his phone at a distance from immigration enforcement officers in an apparent attempt to record a nearby arrest. An eyewitness captured this video of Preddy filming the arrest. At no point does he appear to display a weapon. A minute later, Preddy appears to be using his phone to record two bystanders interacting with a federal officer before that officer is seen shoving one of them across the street.
Do not push them into the traffic.
Another camera angle shows the officer shove one of those individuals into Preddy. You can see the two holding on to each other. The confrontation escalates. Both of Preddy's hands are visible. One holds the phone, the other he held up seemingly to protect himself from pepper spray.
Whoa!
Preddy is seen being pepper sprayed. 3 officers grapple with him until he's taken down and held on the frozen pavement. Another group of officers then surrounds him. At 9:01, the federal officer in a gray jacket emerges from the scrum with a gun that appears to match the one Preddy had a permit to carry.
So I'm going to stop it right here because it's going to get into a couple of other things that I don't know if we'll continue to go through it. But there is an angle from that side, from the backside, where you saw that man take the firearm, that they take the firearm and they take it away. And I'm not hearing anybody say anything about a gun. You just see another officer just unload a few shots. Now, mind you, this man is on the ground. You've disarmed him. He's on the ground, and you shoot him while he is on the ground.
Almost simultaneously, the first shot is fired. Officers step back. Within 5 seconds, 9 more shots. And soon after.
So that's all we needed to see in regards to that. So we see what happened this weekend. Now, it escalated from there. Then you saw the administration come out, and let me see if I can get to her press conference. Let me go to my bookmarks. Let me get you. We're just scrolling my bookmarks, child. So here we have Secretary Kristi Noem
to disarm this individual.
So then we have her press conference, and I believe her press conference was after the man from who's over the Homeland Security, the Border Patrol. I believe her press conference came after that. So let's look at her press conference first, and then we'll go look at his. And I want you to tell me what you find interesting about both of these press conferences.
Individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement. About hundreds of protesters then showed up at the scene. They began to obstruct and to assault law enforcement officers. We saw objects being thrown at them, including ice and other objects, and a rampant assault began, and even an HSI officer agent's finger was bitten off. Crowd control measures were deployed to bring safety to the public and to law enforcement at the scene. And once again, I want to remind everybody that this situation and this tragedy did not have to happen. Our law enforcement are doing everything that they can to protect the public. We're praying for this deceased loved one's family and friends, but we also recognize that the Minnesota governor and the Minneapolis mayor need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. They need to evaluate their rhetoric, their conversations, and their encouragement of such violence against our citizens and our law enforcement officers. I'll remind you that Governor Walz today in his press conference said that our officers were not even law enforcement, which is a lie. He's called them the Gestapo. He's encouraged residents and citizens and violent rioters to resist. He's doxed their identities, putting themselves and their families' lives in jeopardy. He's refused to turn over murders to federal law enforcement officers. He's protected illegal criminals and protected them from being brought to justice, and even overseen a historic, unprecedented theft of American taxpayer dollars.
All right. So she talked about this. So we're going to go down, scroll down my. Let me take you here.
The privilege and honor of leading United States Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection here in Minneapolis. Some of those brave men and women of Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security law enforcement join me here today to show support for all federal law enforcement who have been under constant attack in Minneapolis for weeks now. This morning was no different. At 9:05 a.m. Central Standard Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien, Jose Huerta Chuma. You can see this illegal alien on the screen to my left and right. That is Jose Huerta Chuma, whose criminal history includes domestic assault to.
And you can tell how old these folks are, because do they still say illegal aliens or do they say illegal immigrants? I'm just saying.
Intentionally inflict bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. During this operation, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The agents attempted to disarm the individual, but he violently resisted. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, a Border Patrol agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but the subject was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 loaded magazines and no accessible ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Then, about 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement. Crowd control measures have been deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. This situation is evolving and more information is forthcoming. The officer was highly trained and had been serving as a Border Patrol agent for 8 years.
All right. So you see how they're and you remember I talked about that they are working to control the narrative. They want to control the narrative. You notice how they say, well, we're protecting the public and then we're protecting our officers. And he's going to go into the same thing. Well, let's hear what he has to say. I'm not going to say what he's going to say.
The officer has extensive training as a range safety officer and less lethal officer. As mentioned, this is only the latest attack on law enforcement. Across the country, the men and women of DHS have been attacked, shot at, doxxed, had their family members threatened. And as we have seen, more than 100 vehicle rammings over the past year against federal law enforcement. We will not allow violence against our law enforcement officers, and we need state and local help, state and local law enforcement, to help us coordinate to get violent criminals off the streets. Mayor Fry and Chief O'Hare just a few minutes ago did the opposite of that by omitting the fact that the suspect had a gun and magazines full of ammunition. In what looks like a situation, again, where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement.
So that's where I want to stop him right there. Because again, look at the video that we saw and listen to the words that they're saying. They don't juxtapose. From what we understand, that Minnesota is a state that you can open carry and you have to have a license to conceal a weapon. It is my understanding that he had both. He had both of those privileges. It's also my understanding that he was not there to cause maximum harm. He was there as a trained observer. So let's go ahead and move down, because I think I have hit Tim Walz. This is supposed to be the pew-pew that they recovered. Yes, we've got Governor Walz.
For the future prosecution of
No, we don't have the whole thing. Let me see.
Minnesotans are witnessing, and we're creating a log of evidence for the future prosecution of ICE agents and officials responsible for this. Minnesotans are witnessing, and we're creating a log.
So that's not the full one. I'll have to find the full one later. I think that's all I got from here. Let me see. Hold on. I had it up, but I just got to pull it back up. And then it seems like the computer wants to run extra slow today. All right. All right. I found it, y'all. Give me 1 second. Let me move it over. So let me. I had it all queued up. All right.
Thank you all for being here. I'll have a short statement, then I'll turn it over to Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson to update the situation, joined here by Hennepin County Sheriff Witt, State Patrol Colonel, and General Menke, the Adjutant General of the Minnesota National Guard. Well, as I said last week, this federal occupation of Minnesota long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state. And today that campaign claimed another life. I've seen the videos from several angles, and it's sickening. But I have a strong statement here for our federal government. Minnesota's justice system will have the last word on this. It must have the last word. As I told the White House in no uncertain terms this morning, the federal government cannot be trusted to lead this investigation. The state will handle it, period. Let me say something else, and this is critically important. All of us understand what happened this morning and the tragedy of it, and my deepest sympathies to the family of a 37-year-old Minnesota resident, a lawful firearm concealed permit carrier, something that I've been lectured to by Republicans for decades, that is not only your right, it's your duty. We know that the potential to further inflame tensions is high, and to Minnesotans, there's a difference. We want calm and peace and normalcy back to our lives. They want chaos. We cannot and we will not give them what they want by meeting violence with violence. Minnesota and our local law enforcement, as you have seen, have done everything possible to de-escalate. Local media has reported extensively on the cooperation to de-escalate this situation. Donald Trump, I call on you once again, remove this force from Minnesota. They are sowing chaos and violence. We've seen deadly violence from federal agents again and again and again. But in contrast to that, on these frozen streets, what you witnessed yesterday was the best of Minnesotans, peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights. And I attended in the church basement hundreds of Minnesotans from all faith packing care packages for families that have been ripped apart. Despite the horrific acts by this federal government, Minnesotans are standing up for the rule of law. They're protesting loudly and urgently, but peacefully. It must stay that way, Minnesota. Minnesotans are witnessing, and we're creating a log of evidence for the future prosecution of ICE agents and officials responsible for this. They're helping their neighbors. They're walking their kids to school. They're feeding families. I salute their courage and their restraint, and I call on all Americans to see the decency that this state is exhibiting and the horrific cruelty, unprofessional, absolute abomination that is passing for what these ICE agents are doing on our streets. They think they can provoke us into abandoning our values. Well, they're dead wrong. We'll keep the peace. We'll secure the justice with our neighbors, and we'll see this occupation ends. Minnesotans and Minnesota law enforcement that continuously is being denigrated by this administration will continue to be the adults in the room, the professionals in the room, the decent human beings in the room that will keep the peace. With this, I'd like to turn it over to Department of Public Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson to update you on the situation as we know it.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Bob Jacobson, Commissioner of Public Safety for the Department of Public Safety, and again, it's my honor to serve in that position. A man was shot and killed this morning in Minneapolis. I want to pause and remember what cannot get lost in this moment. A man died. His family and friends are feeling unimaginable heartbreak and trauma. And I know Minnesotans and I know our community will rally around this man's family and friends to support him. I also understand clearly that people are upset. They're scared, they're confused. And I want to assure you that this state's public safety officials and our local law enforcement partners are doing everything in our power to get answers, to help return a sense of normalcy back to our communities. You have the right to demonstrate peacefully. We recognize that demonstrations are often driven by strong emotions, beliefs, and a desire to be heard. But please, please remain peaceful. And I want to say it again, that because it is important and it is critical. Peacefully demonstrate.
Okay. I'm going to see if I can fast forward just a little bit.
Never ever sue the.
Well, we won't be doing that. So let me stop sharing real quick. All right. So you see there are two different narratives. You see that what we saw from the press and what the governor has been talking about what happened to this young man, and then the narrative that the government, the federal government, is putting out is that he was some kind of terror, IST, who went there specifically to cause harm to ICE agents. So you see that there's just two different types of narratives, and it's looking like the Trump administration is losing that narrative. Now, let me move here. So I wanted to go and show some things. There were some tweets and things that went out because apparently Trump and the governor had a conversation. But here are some tweets that went out, and they're not in any order, but I thought that they were important to read. Fox News has a tweet saying, cooperation crisis. Former ICE agent Tim Miller warns that local law enforcement refusing to work with federal agents is putting public safety at risk as Minnesota faced weeks of unrest following 2 fatal shootings. The scary part is that the police aren't with them, Miller says. So they're saying that, and Tim Miller is saying that I guess the ICE agents need protecting from the public, and they want the police department to employ riot protocols and protest protocols for them as they do their job in getting the illegals or the illegal immigrants who have criminal records out. Donald Trump tweeted out that Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. The governor very respectfully understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. He was happy that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I. We have had such tremendous success in Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Louisiana, and virtually every other place that we have, quote unquote, touched. And even in Minnesota, crime is way down, but both Governor Walz and I want to make it better. So, which is interesting because I believe that Christie and the Border Patrol agent have lost hold of the narrative that is kind of pissed off President Trump. And so he's sending somebody else down there to kind of coordinate what's going on. I don't think he gets upset real quick if things are not working the way he wants it to work. So it looks like he may have pulled Christie off from being the point person at this time. He's going to have her handle the weather situation with FEMA. And so while this Tom Homan comes down and handles what's going on in Minnesota. Now, she put out a tweet, said that this is good news for peace, safety, and accountability in Minneapolis. I have worked closely with Tom over the last year, and he has been a major asset to our team. He has experience and insight will help us in our wide-scale fraud investigations, which have robbed Americans. Now, remember, they're going back to the fraud investigations. The two scandals, the two things that they're investigating, because they pretty much investigated and have prosecuted the Feeding Our Future scandal, where you have the two main people, what's her name, Amy, and I can't think of what her co-defendant, he's from Somali, He's a Somali immigrant. I can't think of what his name is right off the bat. And side note, what's so interesting to me is I reported on this. What was it? Back in November, I believe it was. We talked about the Feeding Our Future scandal in regards to Somalis, and I talked about Amy Bach. And all of a sudden, what I'm seeing online, particularly on the X app, is you see a lot of Somalis that are coming up saying, see, she's the person, she's the person who was doing all of this. She's the one that was the ringleader. And remember, I reported, yeah, but that has been reported. I don't know why people are all of a sudden now figuring out that Amy was there. Amy had been there, because these types of scandals and scams has to have a point person. And they were the top, the top 6 defendants that have been, I think two of them have been acquitted, but there were 6, 4 of them have been adjudicated. They have been found guilty. And then there's about 60 other people who have turned themselves in and they have pled guilty. But you have about 60 and 70 different folks that are involved in the Feeding Our Future scandal. Because I want us to be very, very clear. There's 2 things that are being investigated. The Feeding Our Future scandal, now that has to do with the COVID money that was doled out back during the pandemic between 2020 and 2022. And they were reporting to and filling out paperwork stating that they had been feeding hundreds of thousands of people, kids, because that's what the money was for. They were supposed to be feeding the school children in Minnesota that were out of school, and that they were during the pandemic, they were doing distance learning. They were doing online learning. And so they were supposed to be feeding those children, providing meals for those children, as if the school was providing them meals. Okay. They reported that they were feeding more meals than the state of Minnesota had children. Once again, they were reporting that they were providing more meals than the state had children. So it was investigated, which should have sent red flags to the state of Minnesota is not exempt from all of that, because they should have seen that you're providing all this money to a certain group of people. Because remember, there were more than the Somali community that was providing these meals. There were other people that were providing meals. So that means if you had a program that was across town that was providing meals for the and receiving funds, those COVID funds to help provide meals for school children, their monies were not being paid, or they were being overlapped. Because how are you feeding these children over here? And they're saying that they're feeding the children and they're feeding more children. But that's that one scandal. Now, the second thing that they are investigating the Somalis with is what was his name? Nick. I can't think of what his last name will come to me in a minute. But his investigation, or his YouTube video talking about going to the daycare centers and there was no kids, and going to the home health and the transportation services all in a building, and you couldn't see any reasonable services being provided. Now, again, I've said before, now as regard to one daycare, his instances were debunked because of the fact that the hours he went during the time when the hours of the daycare center were not open. He went when the hours of the daycare center was not open. Also, with that particular daycare center, they had their license revoked temporarily because they had a lot of violations that they had to get back together. So I don't know if that daycare center at this point license has been reinstated or not, but that was part of the instance as well. But we saw the children come back a couple of days later. So remember, that's what they are investigating in Minnesota, all that. And they should be also investigating the state in regards to how they were administering the stuff, because it was very lax how they were administering stuff. And plus two, you had the Somali communities when an investigation was being had. Oh, you're investigating me because I'm Somali. You're discriminating against me, and you can't discriminate against me. And that was part of the reason too why either they were dragging their feet about doing the investigations or whatever was going on. All to say that Minnesota is now in the crosshairs of that particular scandal, and also those two scandals that they're having to go in and investigate. And now they're also in the crosshairs of ICE coming out there, and Minnesotans are saying, you know, ICE out. They got to go. They got to go. They got to go. All right. This is what was interesting to me, is that also during this time, during the time of the pruning from the timeline of Alex Preddy, Pamela Bondi, who is the district attorney, the top district attorney for the feds, she came online and she was saying that she had crafted this strong letter to Tim Walz, and that this strong letter, in that he was not complying with the strong letter. And I want to go over this letter that she wrote to the governor and what they are asking, because I had assumed that she was doing a strong letter in regards to what was going on with the ICE agents. But that was for Kristi Noem to do. Pamela Bondi has written a letter, and so let's go over this. I had to copy and paste it into my Google Docs, and I did get the letter from People Magazine, and you see down here is the link for that. So I just wanted to show you where I got it. This wasn't just done in So she says, Governor Walz. Now she's asking for certain different things too, because remember, this particular government has this thing that there's this humongous level of voter fraud. There's this, they're going through everybody's books about Medicaid fraud. Anybody that is receiving, any state that is receiving federal dollars, they are withholding those federal dollars from all the states until the states can provide the feds with information to show that they are good stewards of spending the money that they have going on. So let's go over this letter real quick, because I want to give you a clearer picture about all the different moving parts that are going on, and all the things that I think, again, that the Trump administration is losing the narrative game, because they're going in there, putting their foot down in law and order, not knowing how to do anything with nuance and with diplomacy and tact. I think that they're rushing in there and they're doing these things and they're losing the narrative. And with the pruning of the timeline of these three people, with them losing the narrative of, with the pruning of the timeline of these three people, they are definitely losing the narrative, because the narrative that I think that they want to show is that they are law and order. They have taken control over the nation. They are stomping out voter fraud. They are stomping out illegals. They are doing all of these things. But their tactics And the people that they're hiring in regards to ICE, because let's be very clear, y'all. The people that they're hiring, you all realize that a lot of people that they're hiring and that they're training or to work with ICE at this moment right now, these are also police officers that have had some questionable jackets, that have had some I've got hair attached to my lipstick, and I don't want to wipe all my lipstick off. I just want to get that piece of hair off. And just when I think I get it off, I don't really have it off. But they have questionable jackets. You have folks in here, and also too, I need for those of you all in the immigrant community to be clear and understand something. They are hiring a lot of you all to do this work. So I have seen, watching some of these conscientious observers who are out there recording. I have heard I've seen a Black immigrant that appears to be from Africa, the continent of Africa. Hear his accent, that he's out there picking you all up. I have seen a whole host of Latinos out there picking his people up. I've seen a lot of white men, white men, European men out there picking their people up. A majority that I have seen, a lot of the people that I've seen, they are Latino. Yes, the I will vote for Donald Trump people. And now I don't know if this is there's any truth to this or not, but according to the leaked list of 4,500 ICE agents, some people are saying that people who were part of the Proud Boys, they are out there. Don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if how people can tell all of that, but they are saying that they are out there as well. And I think what's interesting when I talk about that they're losing the narrative is because these people, all three of these people, two of those people should not be of the persuasion that they are. Because see, the narrative that stands with the United States of America is that Black folks and brown folks commit all the crimes and are the criminals. And they're the one prone to do this. What they're seeing now is because, again, the people who are performing these quote unquote ICE agents that are picking up these people, which I don't understand, and y'all help me understand, and I'm sorry to be jumping around, but I don't understand. If you have a target in mind, why are you not going in, extracting that target, and leaving the spot that you're in? Because I don't think that they extracted anybody from the spot that they were in. You seem to you all are supposed to have this training where you can, I mean, the US Marshals do better than y'all of going in, extracting the target, and coming back out. But you all seem, ICE, as I have seen them do, seem to take a lot of pleasure of making sure that they are perp walking everybody. And perp walking and doing all these other things. You know, like I said, I don't like the tactics of what they're doing. And it seems like that part of the tactics that they're doing is causing them to get caught up in all this other stuff. It's cold now. And again, The government has lost control of the narrative because these people are out here marching in 20 below weather, 20 degrees below zero, and these people are out here marching free as they will. You know you have lost control of the narrative, because usually when it's cold like this, people want to be indoors. But anyway, getting back to this letter that Pam Bondi wrote the governor that I think is interesting, and we will be wrapping it up with some pictures of the protesters that were out there, and that is on my TikTok account. So we'll go open that and look at that as well. But let's go back over this letter. I will start to read this. I may not put it on the screen because, again, like I said, I pulled it from People Magazine. From an article that they had in People Magazine. I just want to read it to you, but I'll just halfway through it, I'll show you the letter, because there's some things that I want to that I've highlighted that I do want you all to see. Dear Governor Walz, the state of Minnesota has refused to enforce the law, and the consequences are heartbreaking. Americans are watching politicians ignore federal immigration law, criminal tax, attack federal law enforcement, and rioters storm church services. I write to urge a change. In December 2025, the Department of Homeland Security launched Operation Metro Surge to protect Americans from the dangers presented by unchecked illegal immigration, which is that is a federal government issue and problem, regardless who is in office. Because again, and I will say this because a lot of people want to make this a problem with the Democrats, a problem with the Republicans. It is a whole government problem, because they have been talking about illegal immigration, I know, for the past 25 years. And the reigns of the president and of the government has changed over several times in the past 25 years. In December 25th, the Department of Homeland Security launched Operation Metro Surge to protect Americans from the dangers presented by unchecked illegal immigration. Including violent crime and drug trafficking. Since the beginning of this operation, law enforcement has put themselves in harm's way to arrest dangerous criminals, including members of notorious violent gangs, criminal illegal aliens convicted of homicide, drug trafficking, SA against a child, the R word with a weapon, and other horrific crimes are now off the streets because of Operation Metro Surge. Unfortunately, hold on, y'all, 1 second. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, you and other Minnesota officials have refused to support the men and women risking their lives to protect Americans and uphold the rule of law. Because Minnesota, Minneapolis, and St. Paul have chosen to ignore federal immigration law by enacting sanctuary laws and policies, the federal agents led by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is ICE, and U.S. Custom and Border Protection, CBP, have operated alone. And politicians in your state are not just refusing to help these agents, they are putting the federal agents in danger. Again, that seems like a logistics problem, because they can operate. The federal government and the federal law enforcement agencies can operate without local law enforcement. They do it all the time. I am just concerned as to why do they not coordinate stuff to where they can get in and out? Because if they are looking for all of these people, they should have found pretty much most of the people that they were looking for and then leave. But these ICE agents, and what they're not talking about, and what we have clearly seen video on, is that they're stopping people who are going by their own merry way, asking them for their papers. If you're there to pick up these violent people that you say are violent, why are you then stopping people who are going along their business, stopping them, asking them for their papers? Or to show that they are American citizens? See, that's where you're going wrong, and that's how you're also losing the narrative. Go in and get the people who you say that you're going to get. If you have picked those people up, then you need to leave and go to the next place where you say that these people are existing, these illegal immigrants that are here. You all are team do too much. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said, quote, "ICE, get the F out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. You referred to our law enforcement as Trump's modern day Gestapo." Minneapolis City Council member Aisha Chugtai stated that the city must be ready to act as the last line of defense for targeted communities. Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison has previously compared ICE enforcement to being under attack by the Nazis. And I would correct Keith Ellison there, because when you all don't learn the history, you're willing to repeat it. They are not acting like the Nazis. The Nazis were acting like the United States. The Nazis learned that whole tactic from the way Southern states were enacting slavery back in the 1800s and the 1700s, and how they were operating under Jim Crow in the 1900s. So I will just correct Keith Ellison to say that America is acting like the United States of America. And anybody who is poised to be able to tell you about that are Black Americans. This is why they're making such a concerted effort to remove DEI and any information or control the narrative about what slavery was. And they are teaching your children that, oh, slavery was fine. We were housing and feeding people. They weren't slaves, they were indentured servants. And then they hijack terms that belong to the Black American community and then try to turn around and bastardize it to make it seem like there's something wrong. And I will use the term appropriately. This is why it's so important for you all to stay woke. This is why it's so important for you all to understand and know what's going on and not take what the surface level information that's given to you. Use your senses. Because if it walks like a duck, let's continue. The results of your state's policies and politicians' anti-law enforcement rhetoric are a national tragedy. Violence against ICE officers and agents has increased approximately 1,300%. From where? Because I don't like for people to throw out these statistics and there is nothing to say from where. Where is that coming from? From what point in time? From yesterday to today? From this time last year? From the start of where are you getting this 1,300%? And also, too, I do want you to pay attention to the tone of this letter. And the reason why it's so important to pay attention to the tone of this letter is because this is how because they're talking to Democrats. And Democrats always like to act as if they're having the high road. They like to act like they are They don't want anybody to look bad upon them. So they talk to them, because this tone of this letter is talking to them as if they are almost children. Vehicular attacks against ICE officers have increased by 3,200%. Where are you getting that number? What benchmarks are you using to show that it has risen by 3,200%? Perhaps most disappointing, you see the tone of this letter. The lawlessness caused by these policies have bled into sacred spaces of worship. These are dog whistles, because they're referring to the time where this organization, and I can't even tell you where this organization is from. If you all know, let me know down in the comments, that burst into this church because they found out that a pastor in that church was an ICE agent. And so let me be clear on that particular point. I didn't like that. Not because you were trying to expose who this ICE agent was. I don't care about that. What I care about is that you all barged into a church. Number one, I don't like that. Number two, I don't like the fact that the face of the people who barged into that church were Black women. Because that sets a dangerous precedence, because we as Black folks, because you're off code, as I'm gonna say, because we had already established that we were not going to be the face of these things, because it puts our community in jeopardy. Because when you're marching into a church doing what you were doing, even though you had great intentions, the road to hell is paved with them. Because now you are going to ignite other people, because this is that dog whistle that she's using, to come around and barge into Black churches. And them folks ain't bothering nobody. I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, and I'm saying it out of love. There are some of us Black folks that y'all feel like y'all have to be the part of something. You all feel like you've got to do something. Fine, do it. But do not be the front facing of it. You want to have this level of attention placed on you to show that you're this activist and you're out here helping the community. And you need that so bad that you are oblivious to the fact that you're going to set into motion stuff that we as a community do not need. We don't need these folks bursting into to Black churches, disrupting services like you disrupted services for no reason. If it wasn't right to disrupt services when it was happening to Black folks, it's not right to disrupt services at all, regardless of what you think about the parishioners. Like I said, you may had great intentions, but you could have done the same thing when they got out of service as they were filing out of service. You could have exposed that man while they were filing out of service. I understand about trying to make sure that you're on the right side of history. But don't let a battle cause a war that you won't be able to win. Let's continue this letter. Parishioners were met by an anti-ICE mob last weekend as several dozen individuals stormed City's church in Minneapolis to interrupt services and scream in the faces of frightened Christians and their families. Again, dog whistles. You had already named the church. You could have said frightened parishioners, but you want to make sure that it's Christians because you want to make it seem like the only form of Christians are white Christians, and therefore now that they are frightened. the violence against our officers, and the violations of religious liberties. Because again, religious liberties are only for frightened Christians, cannot be allowed to continue. The lawlessness in the streets is matched by unprecedented financial fraud occurring on your watch. And the out of control fraud in your state also implicates election security. You see these words. It is a tragedy that Americans have lost faith in Minnesota's ability to keep its taxpayers' funds secure and its citizens safe. You and your office must restore the rule of law, support ICE officer, and bring an end to the chaos in Minnesota. Fortunately, there are common sense solutions to these problems that I hope we can accomplish together. And these are her common sense solutions. First, share all of Minnesota's records on Medicaid and food and nutrition service programs, including the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program data, with the federal government. Allowing the federal government to efficiently investigate fraud will save Minnesota taxpayers money and ensure that Minnesota's welfare funds are being used to help those in need, not enrich fraudsters. So here is my issue with that. Everybody on these programs go into a federal database. And that federal database tells you what state that they're coming from, what county they're coming from, all of that information. And that information is uploaded to the federal government so that the funds can be made available to make sure that you're paying for these people. The federal government is responsible for auditing the states for this information. And so my question is, because I know they do that here in Alabama. So my question is it different for every state? I wouldn't think so. You should have all of this information for this first instance. Because when you go to apply for SNAP benefits, you as the person applying, you have to present a whole bunch of documents, and those copies of those documents are made, and then they're uploaded into the system. So why is it that you do not have that information? Why haven't you received that information? Well, Pamela Bondi, you need to go to those particular programs. You need to go to those particular federal, whoever is monitoring it federally, the USDA and all of those people. Because you will get that information. Because there's case numbers, because the government has to put out the cards and stuff that they use to swipe. That you've got to do all of that. All of that has to match up and sync up with the case that you all have. So I'm unsure as to why you don't have that information if you are investigating. And if you are the head DA, you should have been able to get a subpoena. You should have been able, you don't need a subpoena to subpoena the records that you should already have access to. That's federal information. Second, repeal the sanctuary policies that have led to so much crime and violence in your state. Removing criminal illegal aliens from Minnesota neighborhoods will save lives, and state and local officials should support this goal. All detention facilities in your state should cooperate fully with ICE, honor immigration detainers, and permit ICE to interview detainees in custody to determine immigration status. I urge you to reach an agreement with ICE that allows them to remove illegal aliens in custody of Minnesota's prisons and jails and avoid pushing these interactions onto your streets. Third, allow the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice to access voter rolls to confirm that Minnesota voter registration practices comply with federal law as authorized by the Civil Rights Act of 1960. Fulfilling this common sense request will better guarantee free and fair elections and boost confidence in the rule of law. And again, is there somebody complaining about voter registrations and voter rolls? Because who are you looking for? I am confident that these simple steps will help bring back law and order to Minnesota and improve lives of Americans. Then she says, the time has come for state and local officials in your state to change course. As the chief law enforcement officer of the United States, I am committed to enforcing federal immigration laws and keeping every American safe. Minnesota can and should be a partner with this administration. Do not obstruct federal immigration enforcement. Do not allow rioters to take over the streets. And again, these are the dog whistle words, because again, these people have you have the right to protest. And incendiary words like rioters ensure that people who you have the right to congregate and meet. You have the right to do that, as the First Amendment gives to you. But what she's basically trying to say is, we don't want these people to protest anything. And this is why they have the ICE agents out in the street walking around asking people for their, black and brown people, to show them their papers. Do not hinder federal officials from investigating financial fraud and violations of election laws. You're the federal government. You can have a subpoena to go down, and you can get that information from them. Whether state and local politicians stand in the way or not, we will work every day to protect American citizens and make Minnesota safe again. I request that you join us in the effort. Once again, sincerely, Pam Bondi. And if you want to see this letter, you can definitely look at this link. Go to people.com. Just type in, if you go into your Google search, type in Pam Bondi's letter, and people.com will come up, and you can definitely see this. I just imported it into Google Docs because I wanted to be able to highlight it like I wanted to highlight it. So, all of that to say, with all of this going on, it seems like the federal government has lost control of the narrative. And that is the reason why I think that President Trump, 47, has asked this Tom Holden to come down and to oversee, or I guess to be the liaison for the federal government with Minnesota. Because again, a lot of the constituents that he had no problem with ICE coming in and doing all of this stuff, bopping heads, stopping and frisking people, asking them where their papers were. They didn't have any problems until the people who are being pruned from the timeline starts looking like them. They were almost okay. They were okay with Renee getting pruned from the timeline, because again, she came from a community that they scoff at. She was married to another woman, so they figured, oh well, she was already acting a darn fool because she was married to another woman. So we're okay about pruning her from the timeline. We don't like it, but hey. She doesn't operate the way we operate, so we might be a little okay with that. But now you've got this young man that has been pruned from the timeline, who was an ICU nurse at the VA hospital, who was a conscientious, from all accounts, a conscientious law-abiding citizen, who saw a group of men push and kick two women, and he goes over to try to protect them. And as a pact, they go over, they pepper spray him, they subdue him. He is on the ground. They are in the process of handcuffing. Another officer takes the pew from the back of the man's because he had it tucked in the back of his jeans. They pull the pew from there, and as soon as they pull the pew out, the other officer starts to empty his clip. And they said at least 2 or 3 officers were bucking. Because that one officer started bucking before the other officers could get out of the way. So now I'm starting to question whether the man who lost his finger, was it shot off? Did some shrapnel fall and pop that finger off? It's so many questions. It's so many questions because you have to answer the question, why did you shoot? Because the officer that had the man down on the ground was asking, well, where is the gun? Where is the gun? Y'all are like the Keystone Cops, but dangerous. Because the person who took the gun, there should have been a call or a statement that you say that you have just disarmed him and you took the gun. But he's behind you, the person that, well, to the side of you, and he's shooting. He sees a gun. He don't even look to see who got the gun. He just starts shooting. And the gun wasn't, and the gun wasn't even pointed at him. It's not a robot. It's too many. You know, like I said, I was trying to describe, because let me just go all the way back. You know, you have let me pull it up. Let me pull it up and talk about them both one more time. You've got questions to answer, and you want to be in there. You're not able to control the narrative because, see, you've got to answer these questions. So you got to answer the question as to why an off-duty ICE agent is shooting at a civilian who was popping shots in the air. Now, what were you doing? The second, you've got the second one, and again, people, even if they felt like he wasn't even justified, they would be okay because this man has this certain complexion. And I don't care about people talking about, oh, you're making everything racial. No, we're going to continue. Because again, we're going to go over, I'm talking through this, and I want you to pick up on the dog whistles and the talking points as to why people are okay with something. You're okay with that. Then you get here with Renee Good. You were okay. The populace was okay with that. felt that shooting was justified because they were saying that that she was trying to run over an officer. And you're okay and you were justified. You felt like you were justified with that because, see, now we all realize that she was married to another woman. She's a lesbian. And we know the dog whistles and the talking points behind that community. You're okay with that. But now, you tried to point the narrative. You tried to control the narrative and say that he was a terrorist. And he went there with the intention of harming ICE agents. But the video doesn't bear you out. And now you're back trying to backpedal. And in the words of that community, backpedal and pussy pop. Because see, you don't have the words now to be able to tell us why Alex Preddy is dead. Because we see the video clearly. He is white people's George Floyd. Minnesota is an open carry state, and he had a permit to have a concealed weapon. So it doesn't matter if he had 2 other magazines of ammunition. He had a permit to do so. You all had unarmed him, and you still pruned him from the timeline. And you want to call that justified. You want to call that justified. Here's some of the protesters.
Sí, se puede, sí, sí, se puede. If we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace. If we don't get no justice, they don't get no peace. If we don't get no justice, se puede.
So you just saw them. They were rioting. Let me see. I think I got a couple of pictures, if I'm not mistaken. No. I think it's on my TikTok. Let's see if I can pull them up. This is all the protesters that were out this past weekend. And they're saying that they are protesting in several different cities. All right. Quiz Q is not a robot says they're not going to be happy until they get a civil war, and probably not, but they have to be very careful about what they want, because I predict that if another person in another state is pruned from the timeline, they're going to get a civil war where they think that it's going to be the majority versus the minority. It's going to get to where it's going to be the majority fighting the majority. And I don't think that that's what they want. I really don't think that that is what they want. All right, people, just to conclude, Trump and his administration is losing hold of the narrative. They have had these several talking points that there are problems with illegal immigration. There are problems with election fraud. There is problems with all of these things. The three things that he's been campaigning about, he's starting to lose the narrative on that because the people that he has in place, the Pamela Bondis and the Kristi Noems of the world, are not able to control the narrative like he wants that narrative to be controlled. Things are getting out of control. Where they thought that they were going to have this pushback from the Black community, so that they can then initially say, hey, these people are thugs, these people are lawless, these are the things, these are the problems that are going on. We need to take control of this country. They are finding out that they're not getting that type of pushback. And the people who they did not think was going to give them the pushback is giving them the pushback. That is true. And for the population of the Caucasian folks, you are now starting to see. And what's interesting to me is they're starting to feel probably a very, very minuscule of what Black Americans have been going through since this country was enacted. That people are getting pruned from the timeline, even though that they're unarmed, even though that they weren't violating any laws. See, they were getting pruned from the timeline because we have people in law enforcement who go into law enforcement with these level of biases that come from these certain people, these leaders who are prejudiced, who are bigots, who are racist. And they're able to push these talking points through so that the masses believe it. And not only do the masses believe it, the whole world believes that. Because Black Americans have no allies. Everyone believes the worst of the worst, but yet they want us to get out here on these front lines and to march and to organize and put things together so they will be okay. See, the Latino community is starting to feel it because they believe that Black folks was lazy because a lot of Black people don't want to work, or for whatever reason, if they are working, it's not that many, don't want to work out in the fields. And that's their choice. But because you come over and you work in those jobs, you consider that you work hard and that you are more, you bring more to the table because you're willing to work those jobs. And you're able to get a lot of your folks in there because you undercut Americans for the wages for those jobs. And particularly when we're talking about construction and when we're talking about any of those other type of labor jobs, you undercut them. Of course, white America is okay with undercutting because it's going to save them money. And you think it's because they like you because you're working hard. No. You're not working for the legal wage. They're able to pay you a fourth of what they would pay people for the legal wage. And this is why they have you working. But you've noticed in the past 10 years, I've noticed in the past 10 years, from people trying to buy houses and they're having to pay these extraordinary fees, mortgages, and houses are so expensive, but the quality is shoddy. It used to be that, you could look at a house and tell it had good bones, and people wouldn't get a home inspector because they knew that that house was built with quality, was built with quality and care. Now you're the biggest fool if you don't find a home inspector to inspect your house. New construction 6 months, but the electrical work is about to implode in the next 2 or 3 months because certain wires aren't covered right. Exposed wire by plumbing pipes. It used to take you 4 or 5 months to build a house. Now it takes you what, 30 days? It has never. It's always been about control. And how do you control? You start making people dislike each other. But see, now it's the narrative has changed. This one man, because the video shows his actions were chivalrous. He was trying to make sure that the two women that were being pushed because they were taking pictures with the camera, they were being manhandled by ICE. He's trying to protect them. Groupthink have them that he's a threat, and they're wanting to arrest him. Now he is gone. How did that lead to all of that? Because you're supposed to be highly trained professionals. If you were there to get somebody who you were supposed, you should have had, that person should have been in custody in less than 15, 20 minutes. You pull in, you set up, you go in, you bring them back out. You're supposed to have a car or something waiting for them to go. So if you were coming down the steps with them and somebody was blocking your way, yeah, I could see you pulling them aside and arresting them because they're not supposed to be that close to you. But again, the government has lost control of the narrative. The narrative has swung. And he's sending Tom or Tim Holden down to control that narrative. And let's see what happens now that they're looking to control, to see how they're going to swing back to control this narrative. Because the video is not bearing Pamela Bondi, Kristi Noem, the guy that's over the Border Patrol, nor 47 out. I would tell you all, and I'm going to leave you all with this. Go read your Constitution. Because you all have allowed people to spoon feed you their version of what they think United States of America is supposed to be. Go read your Constitution. Because it has not been, martial law has not been declared. The Constitution is still the law of the land. Go read it. There are audiobooks of it, but I want you to pay attention to the Bill of Rights. That's the first 10 amendments of the United States Constitution. Because you have unalienable rights in that Bill of Rights. It's about time you read that and know what they are. It is so important for you to do that. Please go read them. Again, you can get your you could put it on your screen and Google can read it to you. Siri can read it to you. Hell, if you learn better by song, y'all go to Schoolhouse Rock. I know it's on YouTube. Just put Schoolhouse Rock and go through there and let them tell you about the Declaration of Independence. Let them tell you about the amendment and how a bill is made. All of these little different things. This is stuff that you should have been paying attention to in your civics class. I don't know if in school now, do you have a separate class for civics or is it part of your history class? If you're listening to me and you're 16 years old and older, go back and read. If you hadn't read it, go back and read. Go and read it. If you have read it before, go back and refresh yourselves. First 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Because see, the playbook that's being played is fear. We want to keep y'all scared. And when y'all scared, you'll do two things. You'll retreat or you'll go and hurt the people who biases tell you to be afraid of. And even when them folks hadn't done anything to you. But if you're an informed people, an informed populace, and you understand and know what your rights are, when y'all are out here protesting and you got all your signs, have 10 signs that have the Bill of Rights on it, the 10 amendments, as you all are marching. Because one of the things that you can do to overcome fear is to increase your knowledge. Understand what's going on. Don't let anybody run you down a path of propaganda, rhetoric, and fear. The best way to tackle that is to have knowledge. If you don't like somebody because somebody has harmed you, that is one thing. And be able to articulate that. And lastly, don't allow anybody to think for you. If you're going to agree with something, agree with it with the knowledge that you know what you're talking about. All right, people, we do this every week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video if you care. Y'all, I think, if you don't know, now you know, baby, baby. These people want power, and they want to be able to control everything about what you do. And you can let your fear, you can let your fear, you can let your hatred, you can let all of those things get you caught up to where you react like the people of Germany. You just turn a blind eye. Until someone comes in and shows you and exposes you and puts the light on what people are doing in the dark or people are doing in your name. Stop letting people do things in your name. And you find out that that's not what you want. You've already had a situation where you have where as a country, because let's be very clear, United States of America is the United States of America. And folks don't care what you look like. They just know that you're from the United States of America. And if folks are feeling like the United States of America is running around here, overtaking other people's governments, putting people in place and trying to take things from them, people don't like thieves. People don't like bullies. And people don't like to be scared, because then you're going to anger other people. And I need for us as American citizens to understand and be very, very clear. Technology-wise, education-wise, we are about 30 years behind the rest of the world. Because we're so busy trying to make sure that people, that Black folks and other people of color are not in certain places. It's 30 years behind. And a lot of Americans do not converse with the rest of the world. So you live in this little bubble thinking that everybody is trying to be you. And all they want is your money. Because you've made it seem or appear that you all are living wealthy and living large. See, they don't see the fact. They need to start seeing that you all are making decisions about whether to eat or put gas in your car. They need to see and know that the United States government is in trillions and trillions of dollars of debt, but yet that they can pay all of these countries to house people that they are deporting, that they say are criminals. You can't get health care because your government says, no, you can't have that. You don't want universal health care is bad. Because those profiteers won't be able to make the money off of you being sick. Meanwhile, you can spend billions and billions of dollars to different countries, Israel included, and they have universal health care. They have all the things that you're not allowed to have. But your tax dollars are supposed to pay for it. You're paying your tax dollars for everybody else to have a better healthcare system than you have. You're paying your tax dollars for everyone else to have a better educational system than you have. Okay. Because I know when I went to school, civics was, you took a whole year of civics, and I took that in the ninth grade. You had, the way mine was set up, I took civics in the ninth grade. We had U.S. history in the 10th and the 11th grade, and then I think they had some part of world history, not a whole lot, just, just very cursory. And it was more about that particular history always dealt with European history, as far as like with Britain and the United States and the Civil War and all that other stuff. I mean, not the Civil War, but the Revolutionary War. And we had to learn prominent world leaders at the time. We had to learn about the United Nations, and very cursory, but that was because you only had to have like 3 units of history. So it was civics in 2 years of US history, and you were cool. But I remember being in the 12th grade taking that. I think that world history was an elective that you can take. And I remember taking that. I don't know how they set it up in schools across the way now, but that's how it was set up for me. We had a whole a year, because like in the civics class that I took, not only did because we had to go through the whole Constitution, we had to learn the Constitution and the amendments, and because at that time I remember having to take a test on the amendments. You had to name all the amendments. I think it was at that time it was 26 amendments, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. You had to know all the amendments, and you had to know what the function of those amendments were. And I mean, it wasn't on the Scantron. You had to actually write that stuff out. I remember the exam being that way. The first half of school was, I think it was the first 12 or 13 amendments, and then the last half was the 14 through the 26 amendments. And we had to take, that was what our exams were about. And we had to also learn about the different wars: the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, II, Korean, Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because when I was in school, I think the biggest conflicts, I think the biggest thing that we had, we talked about the Vietnam War, and we also talked about like the Iran hostage situation and stuff like that. We learned, we taught, we just, like I said, we cursory talked about it, about what happened, what caused it, and all this other stuff. And again, we were learning that in the 9th grade in high school. But I don't know the changes that have happened now. It's like they don't want kids to learn about anything that's going to make them ask questions, because we went over, and like I said, we weren't in depth about it, but it was just enough for us to pay attention. Because I remember from my civics class, that's what made me pay attention to reading the newspaper. I know that they don't do that now, but it was very important to read the newspaper, because, when we learned about how bills were established, then it made you pay attention to what was going on locally. What was going on locally? What was going on in your county, in your city, in your county, however it works out for you, in your state? What was going on there? It made you pay attention, because see, I come from the era where you had your local news and then you had your nightly news. And your local news talked about everything that was going on in your community or possibly in your state. And the nightly news talked about pretty much everything that was going on in the nation. And they were able to pick and choose what they were going to talk about. However, when it came to politics and stuff like that, they were very clear to tell you what was going on federally in politics. And you learned what was going on locally in politics by reading your newspaper, by watching the local news, because, you know, they would always have back in the back pages, maybe like a page where they were talking about what was going to go on. And if the school board was meeting, they let you know in the newspaper if anything was going on, if the legislature was getting ready to meet for something and they needed a quorum to go and talk about it, you would be able to go there and listen to what they were talking about. So, you know, I learned all of that from my 9th grade civics class. And I think that's why it's so I don't know if they're doing civics class anymore, if that is something that they're talking about, because, you know, a lot of things now, you know, it's more of just, if you know how to take a test, that makes you appear to be smart. Because back then, you know, when we were taking tests, we had to actually write our answers out, because it made you think about what you were going to write and then, you know, and write it out. You had to think about it. So that means that you had to at least have a level of learning and a level of understanding, which really made that muscle that you have to critically think work. But anyway, I've gone off the gander. I apologize for that. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again and I'm going to complete it. Please tell a friend, tell a kin, tell a coworker, tell that heifer that you can't stand that I'm over here making these videos. And as always, people, bye-bye.